The story begins in the United States, near a town called Ascension, where Agent McEwen is conducting research with his colleague, Agent O'Neill. Shortly after 1 in the afternoon, the two hear a rumble that sounds like thunder, but it is coming from inside the mountain. The devices start beeping, showing data that is far outside the expected range, and O'Neill shows McEwen that the ground in the area is heating up too quickly. Despite the scare, they don't seem too surprised by the phenomenon, and McEwen communicates with someone over the radio that the anomaly has been confirmed. It is then that the ground begins to shake, causing violent gas eruptions suddenly. O'Neill is hit by one of them, and McEwen rushes to help his colleague, but sees that it is too late and decides to get out of there as quickly as possible. However, the eruptions multiply and the shaking intensifies, causing him to trip and fall near a rock formation that is splitting apart. His briefcase slips down a ravine and falls far away from him, with a small red light blinking on the side. After that, we see a group of workers nearby under the supervision of Thomas Walsh. They are surprised by a brief earthquake, but Thomas says it's nothing serious and tells them to get back to work. A worker named Joe brings him a cylindrical object he found near the stream, and Thomas says it's not his. The thing seems to emit some sort of signal, but neither of them knows for sure what it is. Then the tremors start again more strongly, and Thomas tells everyone to move away from the trees. However, a heavy branch falls before Joe can get away and ends up landing on his leg. He takes the situation with good humor, and his colleagues help put him in the pickup, but then he suddenly loses consciousness, and Thomas is shocked to find out that he is dead. Meanwhile, geologist Emily Allington is talking with her colleague Daniel about earthquakes in the Lincoln Mountain region. Emily is puzzled by the report data, which reveals much more severe activity than expected, and decides to climb to the top of the mountain to measure the tremors up close. Daniel thinks this is crazy since Lincoln Mountain is technically still an active volcano. Emily says that if the data is correct, people in Ascension need to be alerted, and she knows how stubborn they are regarding science, as the town sheriff is her Uncle Matt. And it is precisely with him that Thomas is talking now, still shaken by Joe's loss. He explains that it seemed to be just a broken leg, and he has seen many workers overcome far worse. Matt says it wasn't his fault, and promises to inform him when the autopsy results come out. Thomas's father is named William, and he is obsessed with crazy theories about a possible connection between natural disasters around the world. Upon finding the wall of the room covered in drawings of monsters, Thomas guesses that his father has stopped taking his medication and shows no concern for any of it. Despite that, he knows that the earthquakes themselves are indeed real, and he gets alarmed when his sister Grace says she is going camping on Lincoln Mountain with her boyfriend Jared. He asks her to postpone the trip at least until more is known about the occurrences, but the girl is stubborn and tells her brother not to meddle in her life. At the same time, a man named Jack Murray is following McEwen's tracker and talking on the phone when the car is shaken by a sudden tremor. The asphalt begins to crack, forming a barrier right ahead, and Jack barely has time to brake. Getting out of the car, he sees the shocking effect of the earthquake and realizes that there are more tremors occurring a few kilometers ahead. Meanwhile, Thomas takes his father to the diner where he works as an accountant. He talks to a woman named Zoe and thanks the owner for employing William. Zoe assures that he is indeed helping a lot, but she also expresses concern about his distracted behavior in recent days. When leaving the diner, Thomas runs into Emily, who says she is back in town to study the tremors. He tells her about what happened to Joe, and Emily invites him for coffee, but he gently declines her advances. At the diner, Zoe asks William about the creatures in his drawings, and he tells her about a Maya legend regarding an underground monster. They believed this being was ready to awaken and destroy the human race when it was close to irreversibly destroying nature. Zoe is so sweet that she doesn't have to be too careful with her words, and directly asks the professor if he has gone crazy. He doesn't take it badly, but their laughter is soon interrupted by another earthquake, even soaking the monster's portraits. Nearby, a resident named Bill is in his yard when the ground suddenly begins to break apart. Confused by the jets of gas, he can't escape in time and ends up swallowed by the crater along with his whole house. When Emily sends the new data to Daniel and tells him she is seeing several dead squirrels, he deduces that there is a concerning carbon dioxide leak. At the same time, Thomas is showing the sheriff the spot where Joe died, and they are both startled to see Matt's dog almost fainting while lying on the ground. It is then that Emily arrives screaming and tells someone to lift that dog quickly. Emily says that the mountain is surrounded by a cloud of invisible gas nearly a meter high, and anything below that won't survive for long. Matt agrees that this explains Joe's death, but gets irritated when his niece talks about an impending eruption since the volcano caused disturbances in the past that turned out to be false alarms. While Jack Murray reports the worsening anomaly to his superiors, Grace tries to leave the house unseen and fails. William grabs her arm, talking madly about titanic beings and telling her that the only account of victory was when an arrow struck one of their hearts, descending through the throat. Sad to see him in this state, Grace pulls away, holding back tears, and goes out to meet her boyfriend. Talking with Thomas, Emily confesses that just the volcano doesn't explain all the strange phenomena and says she is going back to the mountain to investigate. He recommends extreme caution, unaware that his sister is already up there with Jared. It is then that Jack Murray appears, asking for Thomas's help to go up as well, appealing to a mutual friend who referred him as an expert. Daniel warns Emily that various calamities are occurring in different parts of the world, all connected by heat lines coming from the town of Ascension. Then the call drops, and the rocky wall behind Emily begins to disintegrate, releasing huge stones at high speed. William tries to alert Matt about the proximity of the apocalypse, and the sheriff reacts with irritation, threatening to institutionalize him if he doesn't take his medication. Thomas is already climbing Lincoln Mountain with Jack and tries to discover whom he works for, but he can't get him to say anything. Elsewhere on the mountain, Grace feels a tremor, and Jared gets worried, fearing that the outing was a bad idea. Grace is unbothered and recounts their father's story about an earthquake in the 70s when the buildings of Ascension were destroyed and the mountain remained intact. That's why she says they are in the safest place possible to face the tremors. Jared calms down a bit and lets slip high expectations for the night, but ruins the romantic mood by joking about Grace's family. Despite all her pain regarding her father's craziness, she doesn't like someone from outside laughing at him like that. Thomas and Jack reach the area where the eruptions began, finding the damaged equipment and O'Neill's body. In view of this, Thomas refuses to proceed, especially when Emily appears in panic after barely escaping the rock explosion. As the tracker shows that they are still a kilometer away from the briefcase, Jack decides to continue alone, despite Emily's warnings. At the diner, William seems to have arrived at a terrible conclusion and begins to sketch a new drawing while repeating the phrase, "It's here." At night, Grace makes up with Jared and takes a while to understand what is happening when he kneels before her. Only when he extends the engagement ring do his intentions become clear, but instead of accepting the proposal, Grace looks behind him with a shocked expression. The landscape next to their tent seems to have changed radically in a matter of minutes, and a hole has appeared in the rock face. As the ground begins to shake again, a giant eye stares at the couple through the hole before disappearing into darkness. The two are frozen in terror and only move when a colossal tentacle emerges from the same hole to attack them. Matt gets annoyed when Emily and Thomas arrive talking about disasters, still convinced that nothing will happen. Much to his dismay, Emily recommends evacuating a 10 to 20 kilometer area and notes that a wrong decision could cost thousands of lives. On top of the mountain, Jack makes a call stating the same thing McEwen tried to inform earlier. The singular event has already begun. At this point, Grace and Jared are practically lost, besides being terrified and confused, not knowing where all that smoke is coming from. Grace shows signs of about to have a panic attack, and Jared promises to make sure nothing bad happens to her. Finally convinced by his niece, the sheriff orders the immediate evacuation of Ascension, and really strives to convince the public that this time it is serious. Thomas finds his father very nervous and again dismisses his words without paying any attention, until he hears him say that Grace is not home. Only now, he remembers the trip to the mountain and panics at the thought of his sister being up there, deciding to go back to fetch her. Emily insists on accompanying him, and William forces him to wear a native bracelet for protection. With no time to argue with his father at that moment, Thomas agrees to wear the ornament when William promises to go to a relative's house right now. Despite this, he stops by the diner first to pick up Zoe and waits while she organizes her things, indignant about the sudden evacuation. Talking about him with Emily, Thomas says that the illness started with the widowhood, and Emily scolds him for having joined the army right at that time. Besides leaving his sister to handle this alone, he also broke the promise he made to Emily that they would move to another town together. Jack's voice trying to call someone on the radio interrupts this conversation, and the two find him injured. He says he hurt his leg while looking for the briefcase and still refuses to leave the mountain until he finds it. Emily begins to explain the danger to him, but she is also surprised when the tremor begins to come from the center of Ascension this time. Zoe is still closing the register when a crack spreads through the street and a huge crater engulfs the diner up to the halfway point. Up top, Emily is not as patient as Thomas and forces Jack to spill the beans. He says the government recorded a sonic explosion in the Pacific 6 months ago, and the investigation pointed to Lincoln Mountain as the source of the anomaly. The terrible suspicion is that this is an event capable of changing the course of all life on Earth, and that is why finding that briefcase is so important. It is then that another tremor shakes the mountain, and the three are left agape at the sight of a massive tentacle emerging from the ground. Jack cannot dodge it in time and is thrown hard. Realizing he won't survive, he hands his device to Thomas and pleads for him to find the briefcase, as it contains the only weapon that can prevent the disaster. Not far from there, Grace is in tears, feeling guilty for not taking her father's warnings seriously. We see William and Zoe are safe, but the diner continues to sink into the ground with every tremor. Zoe gets so nervous that she can't act, while William stays calm and helps his friend focus so they can get out of there. However, shortly after, the diner shifts again, and a tentacle passes through the windows, sending Zoe into a complete panic. William repeats his theories, saying that he already knew this, but he didn't expect the center to be so close. He explains that the craters are emerging due to the creature's displacement, and the danger now is the gas coming in through the cracks in the windows. At the same time, Thomas finds the blessed briefcase and decides to recover it, while Emily thinks it is risky to lose more time. William and Zoe start covering the cracks with tape, but she begins to feel dizzy and needs to move away from the window. After almost rolling down the slope while trying to throw the briefcase to Emily, Thomas recovers from the scare and then manages to toss it on the second attempt. But before he himself can climb the stretch to Emily, the mountain begins to shake, and he almost falls again. Grace and Jared are still halfway down when this tremor opens a huge hole, and the two hang on the edge while the monster's grimace emerges from the depths. Jared can't hold on for long and soon falls into the abyss, to Grace's despair. She also feels that she can't hold on much longer, and to make matters worse, the beast keeps opening and closing its immense mouth right beneath her feet. But just as she is about to give up, someone grabs her hand, and Grace feels relieved to recognize her brother, who helps her out of the hole. Back at the diner, William notices that there is a trap door in the ceiling through which it is possible to exit safely, and Zoe goes after a ladder. Grace is inconsolable over the loss of her fiancé, but Thomas convinces her that now is the time to focus on survival. Examining Emily's map, they conclude that the creature occupies the entire mountain, and the only possible exit is to reach a forest ranger station at the foot of the mountain where there should be a helicopter. When Zoe finds the ladder, William tries to be a gentleman and suggests that she go up first, but she says she doesn't have the strength to pull him up afterward, and he agrees to go first. As he climbs to the attic and reaches out to her, Lincoln Mountain begins to expel a gigantic cloud from the top, simultaneously releasing several tentacles of the creature. The tremor reaches the town, knocking down the ladder before Zoe can climb, and William panics when he sees that she hit her head and fainted. Meanwhile, his children are with Emily dodging the debris from the eruption and awestruck by the size of the creature. Driven by the trauma of surviving the car accident that killed his wife, William refuses to increase that guilt by leaving Zoe behind. So he jumps back into the diner and carries her to a chair, where he manages to wake her up afterward. Dominating the top of the mountain, the monster seems to become enraged at the trio of fleeing humans and makes a tentacle collapse right where they are, almost crushing Emily. She manages to run and join the other two before the next strike comes, creating such wind that they only avoid rolling down because they are huddled in a collective embrace. Zoe recovers and manages to reach the attic, but again a tremor disrupts the escape, and this time it is William who falls from the ladder. Arriving at the base of the mountain, Thomas tells Emily to start the helicopter while he tries to use the weapon inside the briefcase. She protests that she doesn't know how to pilot an aircraft, but Thomas reminds her that they have flown together before and gives detailed instructions. That confidence diminishes a bit when he opens the briefcase and realizes he has no idea how to assemble that weapon. Then both do their best, and Emily cheers as she sees the blades spinning while Thomas finishes fitting the pieces together. As soon as everything is ready, he aims the weapon at the Titan and is about to activate it when another tentacle comes down toward him. The three quickly dodge, and Thomas regains his composure, but starts to lose courage when he notices that the weapon is single-use, with no second chances. While William finally manages to join Zoe in the attic, Grace remembers her father's words when she was leaving home. Suddenly, she realizes that her father inadvertently taught her how to use that weapon and tells her brother to aim for the wide-open mouth of the beast so that the projectile goes down its throat and splits the heart in half. As soon as Thomas activates the device, sort of trying to guess where the creature's mouth is, a missile is launched toward the target with enormous precision. Several components come off during the flight and stick to the monster's skin as the body of the missile enters its mouth. Without waiting to see if it worked, the three run to the helicopter as the external bombs begin to explode on the creature's body. They take off in time to watch when the main one is detonated, engulfing the creature in a massive explosion. From above, Thomas sees his father coming out of a hatch on the diner roof and embracing Zoe upon confirming the human's victory over the beast. The family's reunion is emotional, and William does not miss the opportunity to say that he was never crazy. Thomas also takes the opportunity to ask Emily to stay in Ascension a little longer, to which she responds with a kiss.